And we're
go.
live.
There
Let's
we go.
I
bud.
always start. You say it.
Welcome to Shit My Dad Taught Me. What are we? We're on episode 8, 9? What are we
Bro.
doing here?
Double digits.
Double digits today.
Double digits.
All right.
Episode number 10.
There we go.
Let me introduce our guest. This is Richard Fast. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
We were just joking before the camera started because I always ask when you see a guest, you're like, "Hey, listen, man. Like, what? I know you got a back. What do you want me to call you? Is it Richard? Is it Rich? Is it Dick?" And he goes, without missing a beat, he goes, "Yeah, Dick Fast. Just call me Dick Fast." So I'm here with Dick Fast today.
Can I withdraw that?
So I wanted to welcome you to the show, man.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, man.
So looking forward to this one. So Jamie and I did a little research before we start. We have a tradition on the show where we use ChatGPT and we just query it and we hope that it comes up with a proper guest description so we don't have to do the fucking work. So
I feel like though this might lead down to this is gonna be a 3-page thing about Richard.
yeah.
Are we sure we're gonna read the whole ChatGPT about Richard?
So, yeah, he's so I actually had to compress it. But okay, so I'm gonna read it out. You tell me if ChatGPT got it right.
Oh, fun. All right.
Richard Fast is a seasoned author and entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience in exploring human behavior and decision making.
Wow. I'm impressed.
Not bad for a 35-year-old.
Right? Yeah.
30 years experience and you're only 35.
So far, so good. He's widely recognized for creating the board game MindTrap,
Yeah.
Well done.
which I know. I can still, and everybody says it to me, I can picture it on my dad's shelf with that awesome 80s rock band writing that it had with like the gothic kind of Wolfenstein kind of vibes. Love that board game. And among that, over 20 other puzzles and games that have enjoyed global success. Richard has authored books and delves into decision making and personal growth. Titles such as Challenge of Choice and Obesity. It's not what you think it is. These works explore how critical decisions can control our future and challenge conventional wisdom around health and weight management. How's it doing so far?
It's right on.
Pretty
Right
close,
on.
right?
Yeah.
So it goes on. This is the last one. It says, besides his professional pursuits, Richard is a certified trainer and health and wellness coach, advocating for a better understanding of health, fitness, and nutrition. He lives in Ontario with his wife, Michelle, and they share a passion for health and food and often incorporating these themes into their work and personal lives.
Right on. I like it.
Pretty good,
Hey,
right?
I love ChatGPT.
I feel like you got your own Wikipedia page. Like you must. Do you have a Wikipedia page?
No, I didn't set one up.
No?
He's got name.com. That's not bad. Yeah, richardfast.com. So check that out if you're at home. So tell me.
Don't search Dick Fast.
Dickfast.com is a different website, not associated with the show.
I better take that one.
yeah, that's right.
Also involved in personal hygiene, though.
Yeah. There's some crossover. So, what did ChatGPT miss? Is there anything in there that you'd want the world to know?
No, it totally covered it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Great.
it did a great job. Yeah.
Okay, love that. So you and I had a sit down before this. We got to go for a drink. Jamie wasn't there because
Jamie doesn't drink.
Jamie's cool. He's got friends. He doesn't have time for this shit. So we sat down and we talked about a bunch. So I want to go way back to day one. I want to start by talking about you as a kid. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Niagara on the Lake. We were living on a farm, and it was a very unique childhood. I had 5 sisters, and the home that I grew up on was a fundamental home, Christian fundamental. And so my life was pretty much centered around going to church. And ironically, a lot of the other things just weren't very important to my father, like whether it was, and my parents, whether it was education or anything else. The main thing was, we got to get you to heaven. That's our big concern. And so as a kid, that just never suited me. I can remember being like 4 years old, kind of like just never getting into this, rebelling, having to go to church and stuff. And, as I said to you the other day, one thing my father said to me at one point, he says, Richard, this is your big problem. You never allow anyone to tell you what to do. And I thought about that for a long time. And I thought, that's just not true. It's not that. It's just that if you're going to tell me what to do, it's got to it's got to have some back end to it. It's got to make a little more sense. So that was kind of a thing that I had gone through for a long time. And I mean, we were pretty, my sisters and I, we were kind of crazy kids. I mean, we were grade 4, we would figure out how to steal cigarettes, and we went to, we just did anything we could to sort of like buck this system. And, but I always knew, like, I knew my parents were thinking, there wasn't any lack of love there. It was there, but it had to be their way or this is not going to flush. So it was quite a childhood. But the thing is, as I very recently, I shouldn't say maybe 10 years ago, I am now an atheist. And I was at this meeting in Arizona with a gentleman by the name of David Hawkins, a world-renowned psychiatrist. And David Hawkins, he's written a bunch of books on spirituality and things like that. And so I was at this seminar in Arizona, and I was there because I had a lifelong search for spirituality. I mean, it was one of those things, like, life is kind of tough, and if you can have something that you can really put your faith into, this is a pretty powerful thing. But I could never, as much as I wanted to embrace the religion that I was brought up with, I just refused. My mind wouldn't accept it.
Just couldn't connect to it?
I could not connect to it because it just didn't make sense. And every time you'd ask a basic question, it's like, Dad, like, okay, so how do you know there's a God? Well, because it says so in the Bible. And this was like just dismissed. And I thought, how can you accept that kind of an answer? That's just bullshit. There's no answer. That's not an answer. So I'm at this seminar with David Hawkins. And now David Hawkins, we weren't there to necessarily pursue God as in the sense of, in the sense of Christianity or Buddhism or anything like that. But it was a sense of, we were there to find spirituality. And I was a David Hawkins disciple. Ever since I read one of his books, and he had this, David Hawkins, he plunged into some very serious depression. And he described what it was like. He described what hell was like. And it was the most chilling thing I had ever read in my life. And I thought, okay, this guy's got some serious answers. He's been to the very depths of hell. It was unimaginable how he wrote this. So you knew that he had been there. And so here we were at this seminar, and people were doing muscle testing. David Hawkins would, muscle testing is, they do it with food and things like that, but you hold out your arm, and then somebody would push on your arm, and they would ask you various things. Like, if you do it with food, let's say I hold a can of Coke, and I'm holding it next to my heart. And so you would pressure it, and I would go weak. Okay, so then I'd get rid of that. I'd give a nice, glass of water or something, and all of a sudden I'm strong. So that's a real science that people believe is true. Now, it's been debunked scientifically, but that doesn't mean that there aren't millions of people and science people that believe it. So anyway, here I am at this Arizona thing, and David Hawkins is saying he can divine truth from falsehood. You ask him any question you want, he'll figure it out. So everybody was kind of, after, like, we were there for a number of hours, and near the end of the day, people were going up to get divined. They wanted to know various truths about themselves. This is serious shit. So I'm sitting in the audience, and I'm watching this, and all of a sudden it occurs to me, what the hell's going on here? These people were simply switching one form of religion to another. Their new guru was David Hawkins, and David Hawkins would say, he said things like, for example, these were calibrations, okay? So let's suppose he would tell you where you were on the spiritual level. So for example, let's suppose, so I would test you, and I would say, okay, Chris, are you, your faith is, are you a 300 or 400? I'm going to say you're 300. Then if you were strong, I'd say, okay, you're 300. Okay, so Chris, are you 350, 400? And eventually we would figure out where you were on the spiritual calibration. If you reached 1,000, which nobody ever would, but if you did reach 1,000, you would transcend this world, and off you would be in the realm of God. Jesus Christ apparently hit 750, 850 or something like this. I mean, how we came up with this, I have no idea. It was pretty bizarre shit, right? So anyway.
I feel like I might hit 25.
Well, here you go. If you're under 200, well, then you are in the dark side. And if you're over 200, then you're now on your way towards enlightenment. And Hawkins would do things like somebody, so where was Einstein? And so then he would take somebody and say, Einstein was 400. No. Einstein was 450. No. Einstein was 550. Yeah, that's where he was. And if you went strong, then Hawkins would say that's where he was. So I'm watching this stuff and I'm just thinking, what the hell am I doing here?
This is a cult.
This is a cult. And all of a sudden I had this epiphany. It was like, look, I don't need to be here. I don't need to search for something. My epiphany was this. I could accept the universe for what it was. There doesn't have to be an answer. It's just a beautiful mystery. Why are we here? Well, I don't know. I have no idea why we're here, but we are here. And I think the only thing that we really owe ourselves is to find as much joy and happiness in this life as we can find. That's all we can control. And that's challenging enough. But I didn't need to find somebody to give me an answer that says, okay, this is what it is. There's a heaven, there's a hell, or whatever it may be. And I sure as hell didn't need David Hawkins to tell me where the hell I was in the spiritual level. But it was all of a sudden this weight had gone off of me because it was always in the back of your mind. When you're given some kind of heavy dose religion from the time you're like 2 years old all the way through, to me, I always say, that's bullshit. But in the back of your mind, it's still sitting there like, well, maybe there is some truth to it. And it cuts both ways. And I said, and I wrote something on my podcast, or sorry, not my podcast, on my blog. And it's about how I finally found peace when I accepted atheism. And of course, I am all for anybody. If you've got a religion and if you find peace with that, more power to you. In fact, most of my life, I was jealous as hell of people like that because they really, whatever it was, if they found peace in that, that's quite something. Whereas I was this tormented soul. I could never find that peace. And so when I was at this Hawkins thing, all of a sudden I found peace. And my peace was, I don't need an answer. And I'm perfectly happy with not having that. But it was at the point where, to me, the big thing was, some of these heavy duty Bible verses was, you have to raise your children a certain way. And if they're going to either heaven or they're going to hell, and that's just it. But I thought, in the back of my mind, I didn't want children. I couldn't have children because I always thought if that was true, there is no bloody way I would bring anybody into this world. I'm virtually gambling somebody's eternity. If this is true, I'm gambling somebody's eternity on whether they will go this way or that way. And I thought that is madness. If there's a chance of it, I don't want any part of that. And so when I finally, as I said, when I finally thought I don't need an answer, it was just like this massive weight lifted from me. And I'm not anti-religion. I'm not any of that. It's just that for me, I found my peace. And that was, I don't know what the answer is. I'm really happy just to be here in this planet, experience it, enjoy it as much as I can. And it is what it is.
Did you get your $200 back from going to that?
I wish it was 200. Yeah, it was, it was worth every dime.
Yeah.
And I said, too, in this blog that I wrote, we all got what we came for.
Right.
Everybody. They were leaving happy as hell that they had the mysteries of the universe solved for them. And they were buying this, completely bought into it.
Except the people that were under 200. They didn't leave there very happy.
I know, eh? I wonder, I just wonder if somehow, subconsciously, everybody elevated past the 200 mark. You wouldn't want to say, oh shit, man, you're 10, get the hell out of here, Yeah, it was a pretty bizarre thing. And here, I was, oh God, I had to be 50 years old when that happened. So it was quite a thing to go through that. But it was just, as I say, it was just such a relief to go, you know what? I don't need that. I really, I'm just happy with, hey, life is a mystery. It's beautiful.
And then, so bringing that back to your dad. So like, fast forward, you're going down this journey of educating yourself and finding.
Yeah.
Have you had that talk with your dad? Like, have you said, here's what my path looks like?
Yeah. I never actually had the chance to tell him, because when I had that David Hawkins experience, my dad had passed away a couple of years earlier, but before he died, he called me up one day, so let's go, have a bite to eat. So we were out, and while we were driving to the restaurant, he told me something that just kind of blew me away. He said, I just want you to know that I forgive you. And I was like, where the hell is this coming from? I said, what do you mean you forgive me? Well, I just want you to know that I forgive you for never accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior. I held it against you, but I forgive you. And I thought, it was such a revelation on so many different levels. I couldn't even respond to it. I wasn't sure whether I just wanted him to pull the car over and I'd get out and walk home. But it was one of those like, okay, well, this really puts a lot of things in perspective, because it really kind of told me that, we always kind of had a challenging relationship. If I sat down with my dad and said, Dad, what do you think of Pierre Trudeau and stuff? It wouldn't be 45 seconds. We were deep into the Bible about, let's see what the Bible says about this. It's like, I don't give a shit what the fuck does the Bible know about Pierre Trudeau? Like, talk to me. But that's where we would go. It would be almost like a right turn. Let's get in. And that was his cloak. I mean, it was always that. So it was a case of, I don't really think I ever had a serious conversation with my father, not once. Because if we were going to the Bible, I would tune out, and it's like, blow that. It was difficult growing up because I had to figure shit out on my own.
Was there like a follow point between you guys? Like when you got to the age where you were going to move out or whatever, like, did you guys have a falling out?
There was never anything to fall out from, because we never ever had a relationship to begin with. My dad knew I was a pretty carefree, reckless kind of guy. It was my form of rebellion. When I was 12 years old, my dad made a deal with me. He said, look, he says, if you start behaving yourself, I wanted a mini bike really bad. And he said, well, you're not getting one. I said, oh, I was kind of bummed out about that. He said, well, look, if you clean yourself up, no more smoking, no more doing this stuff, and then, you do that for the rest of the summer, I'll think about getting you a mini bike. Well, I ship-shaped real quick and, sit up in church and do all the things you're supposed to do as best I could. I got my mini bike, and I actually was, according to their viewpoint, I was in line for the next couple of years. Then when I got to high school, I was like, oh, well, things kind of go a little awry. And not that I was a bad kid. I did what my peers did. We just do shit. You smoke cigarettes, you drink, you try to get as many girls as you can. That's what you do as a kid. You're finding your way. But, I never had that, sounding board of somebody would say, you might want to rethink a few things. I mean, we all have times we look back in our life and it's like, oh my God, I'd give anything in the world to go back and change that. Just things you said, things you did. We've all had that. I probably have a bigger helping than most of things. It's like, God, I cannot believe, but it was, I needed that. I missed what I needed was what I wasn't getting. It's just somebody I could talk to. And I never had that. And growing up on a farm, we were kind of like, when school was let out, we started, fruit, 8 o'clock in the morning, we're picking fruit, and by 5 o'clock at night, that was the end of the tune. It's time for dinner. And, and we didn't have a TV, of course, most of my life, because that was the devil's work. This is kind of where I'm coming from. That was the devil's work. So we didn't have that. And, then, when finally the last bit of the harvest was finished at the end, it's time to go back to school. So it was like, oh man, I can't wait to bust free. But I think when I turned 18, I was gone on the very day. But, yeah, so that was life in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We're growing up in a fundamentalist home.
When you guys were driving around and he had that conversation with you a couple years before he passed, did that change your guys' relationship afterwards? Like, were things more open and on the table then, or were you still kind of closed off?
Jamie, it didn't, because that conversation actually made me more angry than anything.
Right.
It was like, how you're not honoring my sense of, you're not honoring my right to believe what I believe. And you're admitting that all this time as a kid growing up, you were holding this over my head. You couldn't look at me as your son who maybe saw things a different way. You couldn't overlook that. It was a grudge.
He was almost doing it to make himself feel better in a sense, not to make you feel
Yeah.
better, right?
Yeah. But and in fairness to him though, and this is the madness of like fundamentalists the world over, like whether they're Islamic fundamentalists, it doesn't matter. But it's this belief that somehow you have corralled truth, that you and your group know truth. And it's this, to me, it's a righteous arrogance in the sense that, and in fairness to my father, he saw it through his eyes. He saw his son as going to, all eternity in hell. So there was this terror, that I think he really believed it. And he didn't know how to handle it. He didn't know how, it was kind of like this panicked situation. So in fairness, I always was aware of what his position on this would be. But my mind simply would not accept, like, okay, I can believe something, but give me something to work with here. You can't just say, well, how do you know it's true? Well, it says so in the Bible. Well, what the hell's that? That's not an answer. I want something meatier than that. I never got it. And of course, so therefore I just couldn't go there. And that was kind of what led to, the things that I've written and what I've researched is, if you put, to me, I always had to have something behind it. If I'm going to make a statement, you better be sure you can support it. You can't just say shit. You got to support it. And so when I would research my books or something, I would spend years researching it and trying to look at it from every angle. And, and this was the fun about creating MindTrap. And I think that this is where a lot of this comes from. When I was developing MindTrap is puzzles, riddles, murder mysteries, conundrums, right? So if I asked you a question and if I didn't ask it just right, you would say, well, the answer's obvious, or I said it in such a way that there was no way you could have figured it out. So people just lose interest, or it's like, that was bullshit, right? So if you wrote a MindTrap, it had to be a way that you phrased the question that when you heard the answer, you go, oh shit, okay, give me another one. This time I'm going to be smarter.
So obvious.
Right? Yeah. So it had to be right. And so that was and that took me 6 years of writing that. So that really got me into this mode of, okay, when you write stuff, when you say stuff, you got to make sure that it's supportable, And MindTrap made me maniacal about making sure that when I said something, I had to support it with, as much facts as you can. And I would do this, when I was researching obesity and things like that. You read 12, 15, 20 science papers in a row. They all say the same thing. And you think, okay, I think I can corral this. You read the 21st and it says, no, those other guys are all full of shit. Uh-oh, now you're right back to square one. Okay, so what's really going on here? How can you have two learned PhDs both saying the other one's full of shit? Well, okay, so where do you land on this? And so, that would sort of send you down this rabbit hole. You got to figure things out, and you got to really, you got to be able to substantiate it. So I was, it's just, I think, MindTrap and my whole history of growing up, it was really, it all lent towards, I love writing and I love researching, and that's my happy place. So that's what I'm doing these days. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome, man. That's so cool.
So that love for reading, and then obviously that growing into you being an author or creative, where does that come from in the house? Was your dad, I mean, obviously read the Bible, but outside of that, was he a reader?
No, he wasn't. Well, he would read things that was like that was confirmation bias to the power of 10. Everything he read would be things that would support
Scripture.
what he believed, right? So it would never be like, okay, let me see the other side of the fence here. See if somebody, no, none of that. It was all complete. Just, as I say, confirmation bias to the power of 10. So I think if anything, that was probably what encouraged me to try to see things from a different light. You don't want to know the truth as if, it's in this little block of wood, because it just, just smacked me as, no, that's not the way the world works, and that's not how, that doesn't lead to enlightenment. That's what's so beautiful about science. Science says, look, this is my statement. Please show me I'm wrong, because that's how we all learn. And that's a genuine, that's a true scientist, somebody that really welcomes somebody that can say, no, this actually, your theory doesn't work. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Let's keep, like, that's what pure, that's, if I worship at any altar, it's the altar of that, the search for truth, real truth, not our preconceived, preconceived stuff. So,
Right.
Yeah. And then give us some insight on your dad. So obviously, I mean, just being on a farm, he's got work ethic for days, I assume. And what's the good stuff with Dad? What did he impart on you?
Yeah, well, he provided. He worked in a factory in the day. He worked on a farm, when he got home, and he was. He gave an example of, myself and my sisters. I mean, we're not shy of work. And he certainly instilled that in us. I think that was one of the things. And, he always made sure that we always had at least one holiday, like 1 week every year we go on holidays. And, raising 6 children on a farm, that's challenging financially. What was interesting, I never knew we were as poor as dirt. I never knew that. And that takes some doing as well. So he, my father and I, we would have had an amazing relationship if it just wasn't for that fundamentalist block.
Right.
It was just, that was the big impasse.
What about mom? Was mom just the same?
Well, whatever your father says, that was kind of that role. Now my mom is still alive. She's 94 years old. She's got all her marbles. But she's said many, many times in the last 20, 30 years, we just so regret how we raised you kids. And it's a real genuine thing. My father had mentioned that too near the end of his life. And he was, it was interesting. He was, my older sister told me this not long ago. She goes, he had heart surgery, and he had it in May. He died in September of 2000. But she said, near the end of he was in hospital. He never did get out. He was in hospital, and he said he started questioning religion. And he said, I'm really questioning if everything I believed was wrong. Mm. And it didn't take long before they ushered in, one of the ministers that would, set him straight again, which is, here's this man. He was struggling with the same things I had struggled with, right? I think it was the first time he actually lying in bed in a hospital bed for 6 months that he started maybe looking at things from a different perspective and say, well, maybe I don't have everything in the back pocket. Interesting. I mean, it was one of those, that was, when I heard that, it was like, God, I wish he was still alive to say, okay, well, why don't we just unpack this a little bit more? Never had that chance. So
let me take you for a walk.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me take you for a walk is right. Yeah. And it's not about me wanting to change your belief, but would you just acknowledge that you don't necessarily have truth corralled? Just acknowledge that, because that opens up a whole world right there. Just accepting that, hey, this is an unknowable universe. And anytime I see, it doesn't matter whether it's a self-help guru or anybody, but just anytime I see somebody says, look, this is the diet. Everybody should be a vegan. Everybody should be on the keto diet. As soon as I hear that, it's like, oh, fuck, come on. Like, get serious. Like, there's no one thing everybody should do, period. And if you don't know that, I just dismiss people.
Yeah. Yeah. We see that theme run through on a lot of the conversations we have, especially around mental health. That's the one where, when we talk about it with different guests,
Yeah.
mental health is a journey. There's no one exercise that will see somebody balanced. And some people need more of A and less of B. And
Yeah.
some people find it in, we just had Ryan on. He's found it in physical competitions. He's a professional marathon runner, and that's been his piece, right? And I think going back to what you said about why we're all here, we're here to find that happiness. We're here to find that sense of enjoyment.
Yeah.
I love that approach to anything, especially when it comes to creative, whether it's writing or starting a brand or whatever it might be. Like, we're figuring it out.
Yes.
And
Yes.
having curiosity is so important, and going down that line of what if I, spent 6 years developing a board game. Like, what if? Like,
Yeah.
I know that's gone on to sell millions of copies worldwide, and most people listening will know it. But like, if you didn't have the curiosity, the thing doesn't come. And I think that's the same with spirituality.
Yeah.
Like, I in my own journey, I've just started to get curious about that, because I had the atheist upbringing, and both of my parents were not religious. But that being said, I mean, I've had great talks with my dad just about life and about wellness and what it all means. And so I'm going the reverse. I'm going from the atheist standpoint to the curiosity. And through platforms like this, I've had some great conversations about spirituality. I'll call it, not even religion specifically, but spirituality. But that curiosity piece is what keeps me so fascinated. So you found a few things. We talked a little bit about the authoring. Tell me a little bit about one of the books you've published that was purely out of curiosity.
Well, okay. So I wrote a book. The book I wrote, The Challenge of Choice: How to Make a Good Decision When It Really Matters.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote that book as the result of MindTrap. Now, as a games entrepreneur, I have enjoyed spectacular success. And I've also experienced colossal failure. The failures were always the result of a bad decision. And after I produced MindTrap, I got into the games business, and we created a variety of products. And some of them, we had to raise millions of dollars to do the products. So we had some pretty good stuff, and most of it did extremely well. But it was I made about 3 or 4 really seriously bad decisions in a row. And when that happened, it sort of gives you a wake-up call. Because, when you get success, when you have success, invariably you start thinking, yeah, I guess I've got something special here.
I'm pretty bulletproof.
Indeed. And you start getting a little cocky. And I sure did. I mean, we can see this everywhere. As soon as a company, like whether it's somebody like Apple or, I look at somebody like, DeepSeek. These guys, they were hungry. They find things. It's amazing what you do when you have to, and it's amazing what you blow off when you've got wads of money and you've got lots of success. Well, I was in that position where I was just a little too cocky for my own good, and after making some serious bad decisions, I had to ask myself, okay, how much control do we have over decision making? Is it possible for us to actually make a good decision with certainty, or, is a lot of it just really have to do with, the unpredictability of life? And I wasn't depressed, but I was pretty close to getting into that area, because I felt responsible when I cost our shareholders. It was my company, it was my business plan, it was my promises that people bought into. We raised $17 million for a particular project, and we lost it all. It was my money and theirs.
For one game?
One big product,
wow.
Yeah. It was a gaming console, and there was a whole series of games. It was remote controls. This was a pretty advanced thing. Anyway, it was like 5 years in the making, and we launched this. When we launched this, Toys R Us gave us an opening order for 50,000 consoles, 150,000 games. We got their Product of the Year award. that we had promised of, an end cap in every one of their stores. So we were off and running. About 4 months later, I had to make a call to a law firm that specialized in bankruptcies. It was the lowest point in my life. I mean, that's a whole story in itself. But the point was, I got there, and after having to do that, I shouldn't say you, but me, I had a lot of soul searching to do, and so this is where this whole thing about understanding decisions that we make, and that was what led me to start doing some research. And of course, I was beating myself up really bad. But then I came across Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And this book completely changed my understanding of human behavior and my understanding of how the human mind really works. And so for the next few years, I read everything I could find on decision making and what makes us do what we do. And of course, the answers to those questions was the challenge of choice, how to make a good decision when it really matters. And what I say now is that when you understand how the human mind really works, and, spoiler alert, it does not work the way we think it does. But when you understand how the human mind really works, I promise you, you can make a critical decision. I'm not talking about any Joe Blow decisions. I'm talking about you can make a critical decision, and that's that's that dozen or so decisions that will define your life. You can make that with 100% certainty. And what does a decision that's 100% certainty look like? It means that at the time you make that decision, and you know that it's a good decision. You know it's a good decision before you see the outcome. That's how certain you are, and you can do that. And I have something called the 7 steps to the anatomy of a good decision. So you need 2 things to make that. You need to understand how the human mind really works. And incredibly, it's fascinating, which is how I went down this rabbit hole for years, really trying to understand this. But when you understand how it works, and you combine that with a basic decision-making formula, you can make any critical decision with 100% certainty. And I'm not talking out of my ass. It's true. And I'll give you a quick example. As an author, you're God. Okay, so I decided, let me just back up a moment. I wrote The Challenge of Choice twice. The first time I wrote it, I was doing a seminar in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and I'd finished. It was like 40 minutes or whatever. And a woman says to me, "Okay, so Richard, let me get this straight. If I have to make a critical decision, how do I do this exactly?" And this is the first writing of the book. I said, "Well, I talk about some biases and some heuristics and different little traps that we fall into." I said, "Just make sure that you're not falling for those, and I think you'll be fine." And she gave me this look like, "What kind of horse shit are you peddling? You sound like one of those self-help nutcases trying to make a buck." She didn't say that. She didn't need to. She gave me a look. Message delivered and message received. So this bothered me for, probably another 6 months or so. And I just thought, I think I'm going to chuck this book because she was right. It was bullshit. I didn't have an answer.
You made a critical decision.
Yes. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to dig deeper on this. And that's when I came up with the 7 steps to the anatomy of a good decision, because so I'm not telling somebody that, okay, these are all the problems with decision making. I hope you can figure it out, because, shit, that's not helpful. Give me something more. Because you're basically saying, if I stopped there, that first book basically stopped there and said, well, I don't know, just take a flyer, hope like hell it works, which is how most people make decisions. We make decisions based on complete confidence, only to be surprised when everything doesn't work out. Or we make decisions and we just kind of hope everything works out. And what I say is that's not decision making. That's hoping and gambling and wishful thinking, which is how most people and most organizations actually make decisions. So when I went back and I came up with the 7 steps to the anatomy of a good decision, I started writing some scenarios about, okay, so I would choose a character and say, okay, this guy's going to have to make one of those major life decisions. He just got this inheritance. He's working at Starbucks and, he's a manager, and he quit university, and now he just got this sort of inheritance that came from a lost uncle. And now he has to decide what he's going to do. So I thought, okay, I know what he's going to do. So I started writing out the scenario. And the first of the 7 steps, the very first step is this: you have to say, I don't have a favorite horse in the race. I'm open to all possibilities. If you can't do that, you can't even go to step 2. But so this takes a little bit of introspection. It really takes some honesty. So if you can say, no, I'm open to everything. Okay, now you go to step 2. And step 2 is you have to be able to say in one sentence, 2 at the most, exactly what it is you want to accomplish. Almost invariably, it's not going to be what you think it is initially. And you start refining it. But let's just suppose you park that there and go, I think this is pretty much it. Then you go to step 3. And step 3 is you have to come up with this is not an either or a pros and cons list, because that's just a list of biases. It all happens at a subconscious level. So it's all bullshit. You have to come up with a minimum of 3, and there's always way more options than you ever imagine. So you have to come up with all these different options that you can come up with. And then you go to step 4, and you have to now make a decision. But before you do that, you have to write out your worst case scenario and your best case scenario. And every time I did that, it opened my eyes. It's like, holy shit, I never really actually thought about the worst case scenario. We have this tendency to think, yeah, I'm pretty sure this should work. And on a subconscious level, which all this stuff is happening at, we delude ourselves into thinking that, okay, I think this decision is going to, it's really going to work out. But as an author, you're God. So you decide what's going to happen to your characters. And I never got to step 5 without coming up with an idea that was nowhere on my radar. It was a completely new idea. And it was a wonderful idea. I was like, holy shit. So I would write out a bunch of scenarios. And every time I wrote it out, it worked. I came up with something that was nowhere on my radar. It was a much better decision than I could have ever imagined. So that's when I knew that I knew this works. It really does work. But you've got to understand, we evolved to live in a very different world than the one we live in. We've evolved to live in a world of survival, and that's what we will automatically revert to. We will revert to survival techniques. But in this world, it's a very, very different matter. And you know what? Our survival techniques work beautifully 95% of the time. But it comes back down to those 10, 12 decisions that will define your life. And when you're making one of those, you can't afford to not be right. You've got to be right. And it'll make all the difference in the world. And so that's why I was so, I'm so excited to do this. Do this seminar and this book, because it works. It absolutely works. And it's fascinating to learn how we really think, because it's not, as I said, it's not the way we think. The human mind is just this amazing thing. And you know what? It works most of the time beautifully. And that's all we need, except when it doesn't.
Yeah, now you're gonna be in a day and age where you got to layer technology on top of that.
Yes.
Like when you're doing that matrix, when you're doing that write it down exercise, you've got large language models that'll query beyond the human mind, right? Like you could prompt that to go and find those scenarios.
Yeah.
Go and find possible outcomes that you haven't even thought of.
That's a great point, Chris. It really is. And the thing is, the world is rapidly changing. But there's always a constant. Human nature, human needs, human wants, desires, those things have not changed, nor will they ever change. So that's the conundrum. How do we blend these two things to really navigate this world in a wonderful way? And how do we, embrace all this technology, which we should do? It's wonderful stuff. Embrace it. But we have to learn how to fit these pieces together. The things that we were evolved with, which, those are the passions. Those are the things that you can't manufacture those. So how do we blend it all in? And that's the fun of living, isn't it? That's the challenge, the joy, when you can, you raise children a certain way and you say like, oh, fuck yeah, right. That's working.
And subconsciously, like everybody's probably making decisions based on like 3 main factors. It's always going to be greed, power, and love, right? Subconsciously. So they're not thinking past those things, right?
Bang on it, Jamie. Bang on. That's exactly right. And here's the biggest challenge. When you know you're right, why the hell would you go back and question anything? And what I've seen in retrospect, when I looked at some of the decisions I made, the worst ones were always when I knew that I was right. And it's like, oh man, that's a warning bell. That's a warning bell, because all you have to do is pick up any newspaper, watch any television show, or any news broadcast, and you'll see nothing other than just this litany of shit decisions that people were so sure were right. And it's just it's a natural thing. So you really have to be able to. I think the key is understanding those critical decisions. It's not about going around life going, oh, I got to check everything. Bullshit. No. Most of the time, everything your hunches, your education, your experience, that'll serve you well. But you can't afford to gamble when you're making a biggie. You can't. Believe me, it's painful.
Yeah, I had a mentor early on too, when we had one of our businesses and we had a program that I just knew was going to work. I knew it was going to work. And I would approach all the meetings like that. Like, I got it figured out, guys. Great news. I know everything. Great news. And he said to me, and he checked my ego, because boy, did I have it. I still struggle with it. But he checked it by saying, let's assume you're right, because I think you are right.
Okay.
Could you be more right?
Nice.
And that was his way of saying, can we all talk about it though?
Nice.
Like, can we make sure that we're maximizing? Because let's assume you're right. We believe you're right. Could you be more right? Is there another thing that you could be doing? Can you expand on that rightness? Is that a word?
Yeah, it works.
To do more in
That was his
ways,
way of
right?
telling you weren't right.
Yeah,
I know. Henry
but
Kissinger
playing
what?
the ego at the same time. Yeah. So, but that too, right? And then it goes back to that curiosity piece. Like, even when you think you have it figured out, do the exercise, man. Write it down.
Yeah. Well, that's why I loved our talk the other day. It was like, you're very much of that. And it's fun to somebody who says, made some of those, and I gotta I'm willing to look at a lot of different alternatives.
I was gonna say it out loud when you were like, yeah, I've made some bad decisions. I'm like, boy, are you going toe to toe with the two guys right now? You want to whip those out and put them on the table? We can go toe to toe on bad decisions, I'm sure. I want to go back just to family shit my dad taught me. So. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to today. I'll ask, and I already know the answer, but are you a dad, and what do you carry forward from your upbringing? What's your parenting style?
I have a daughter. She's just 31, and the parenting style was my wife did most of the my wife and my daughter Nicole. They're like best of friends. And I let Michelle do most of what I'd say, making those tricky decisions. I raised Nicole very much on trying to be an example as much as possible. Because I really think that, you can say whatever you want, but let me see your deeds. And that was very much how I raised her, and how Michelle raised her as well.
Don't do as I say, do as I do.
Isn't that it? I mean, it really is that. And so, and one of the nicest things is when she was in her early 20s, she really said, I really appreciated how you raised me, and that was, that meant a hell of a lot. But that to me is a parenting style. And I think that, the biggest challenge as a parent is that you want to protect your children as much as possible. And you're meaning well, but they've gotta make those mistakes, and you gotta let them make those mistakes. And if you don't, and a lot of parents, they just coddle their kids. They mean well, but they're just doing so much damage, because we have to make our own mistakes. And you learn from those. You learn from those in a way that you have to experience them, is I guess what I'm saying. Sure. You've really got to experience them. When you do, those are life's lessons. You don't forget those. And that's the joy of life too. Because when Jamie, you can probably look back and think, some of the worst things, they're some of your best memories, aren't they?
Some of them for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And they probably because they taught you the most.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very much.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So as a parenting style, I think the two things that I would basically say is to any parent is lead by example. And the other thing is you gotta be there for your children, but let them fall and let them make mistakes. And hopefully they'll come to you and say, okay, so how, I fucked up. Where that's when they'll listen to you. But if you don't let them do that, I mean, you're depriving them, I think, of some of the beauty of life, and that is making those mistakes.
What does your daughter do? She's 31.
She works for a super high-end travel agency. So if you want to go on a $30,000 African safari, she will hook you up.
Oh yeah, so, that's cool.
Yeah, and she's passionate about her job. She just lives for it.
She does the crazy excursion stuff.
She does them.
That's awesome.
She does them, and of course, the nice thing is when she goes on these excursions. So if you're say an African tour company, well, this is your salesperson. You go over there, they treat you better than you can imagine. So like everything is 5-star all the way. But she loves roughing it. Like, she's actually tomorrow she's getting on a flight to Costa Rica, and she flies dirt cheap, and she does everything on the lam. So, but she's. She found a job that she's passionate about, and she really loves it. And she's a mom now, a brand new mom. She's an amazing mom. She gets that from her own mom, I guess. But
well, it sounds like you've done a hell of a job too.
Yeah. No, it's lovely, and to have grandchildren, it's just so exciting. It's just, you just to see her from one week to the next, and you see how a human mind starts figuring shit out. It's just endlessly fascinating. I find myself just staring at her, watching her play with her toys, and you can just see how the little mind is working and clicking and clacking and figuring shit out. Great fun.
You're doing research for your next book.
Yeah, I've been prodded into doing that. Like how does a 4-year-old make a decision? Hey, it's never too early to learn. I don't know if I could get my headspace in there, but it's something it's a seed that's planted. Because it would be a lovely thing. I would give anything in the world to be 20 years old again and know how to make a decision. Never mind being 6 years old and have an idea that, what, you can actually control decisions. You actually can determine their outcome. And well, I shouldn't say that so much as you can know you've made a good decision before you see the outcome. And that to me is there's magic in that.
And then how's being a grandfather now? What's that feel like?
Just thrilling.
Yeah,
it is so thrilling. And I had no idea. And of course, when she's 6 months old, I still hadn't picked her up and touched her because it's just she's so fragile. I don't want to go near her. Now that she's a year and a half old, you can sort of do stuff with her. And she was over yesterday, and I had a couple of deadlines to get done. They never got done. I was like, when she's there, it's like she's the world. She's so sweet.
I just love your energy. You're just so bubbly and so fun. You seem excited about everything. It's amazing.
Oh, thanks, man.
Trying to find that happiness.
Yeah.
Trying to live that.
Hey,
happiness.
Ain't that it? Yeah.
So what's if Kozub and I call your daughter and say, tell us about your dad? What do you think she'd say?
Wow. Now you got me off guard. I think she would say I really live, that he lived by example, or he taught me by example. Because she does say that to me now, a fair bit. I wrote a book, not a book so much as it was a program. It was 29 Days to Becoming Financially Independent and How to Understand Money or something. It was a while back. But I gave it to her as a Christmas gift. And I said, look, here's the deal, Nicole. This is a 29-day program, and when you're 16 years old, to ask someone to do something for 29 days, good luck on that, right? So I said, I'll tell you what, here's a check for $1,000. I'm not signing it until you go through the entire 29 days, and you got to do it in 29 days. And so it was really I took her through a trip of understanding money and how, we get ripped off and how money works and stuff like that. So anyway, she went through it. She got her $1,000, but to this day, she is she understands money, and you would have to wake up pretty early in the morning to ever pull one over her eyes. And it was like, okay, so that would probably be something she'd say, okay, you know, I really enjoyed that lesson, because she is, I have to turn to her now. Like, you know, so if I was going to make this financial decision, would this be a fucked up one to make or not? But she's pretty clever. But you know, it was funny because that made such an impact on her. And she talks about that, you know, a fair bit, how, you know, how that influenced her life. So it was a fun thing to, you know, be able to hand her.
Practical parenting. Hands on the show up, but teach the life skills, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's awesome. That comes up a lot, by the way, and we'll talk about it offline. But one of the things we want to do under the whole, you know, shit my dad premise is let's put some like real tactical shit out there so that people can access those resources.
For sure.
Financial literacy is just, I mean, I'm still learning, and I wish that I got those fundamentals from day one. But how do you teach a kid, right? How do you teach a kid what money is?
Yeah.
So we're gonna try and figure it out. We'll talk offline and see if we can put something together and put it out there for everybody.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. Wonderful idea.
What's the next big thing, man? Like, I know you got a bunch of stuff on the go. Like, what are you aiming towards now? Anything we can get excited about? Anything you're promoting?
Well, what I'm doing now is I'm getting into the doing public speaking. You know, for organizations, businesses, because I think the two most valuable things that any of us can have. Number one, if you know how to make a decision, you've got a lot of things cornered. Excuse me, because our decisions, basically, the decisions that we make will define our health, our businesses, our careers, our relationships. So really, when we understand that, that's a big thing. And of course, nothing means shit if you don't have your health. And so I do two talks. I do a talk on how to navigate this world. We're living in an obesogenic world. How do we navigate this world in a healthy way? And it's not about getting into diets, and it's not about all the stuff that people are making money on, because you can be healthy without buying shit. You don't need a diet. You don't need all these special foods. You don't need any of that stuff. What you need to do is you need a perspective. You just need a different perspective of what is actually what we're doing to ourselves. We are poisoning ourselves and our children, and we don't realize it. And so that's what I do in my talk. I walk people through the fact that health is a choice to a great degree. Now, obviously, you know, we can all get that dreaded result from a test report. I mean, no, but that aside, we have an unbelievably large control over our health, and if we choose wisely, we can have. It's not about living longer; it's about the quality. And I mean, nobody wants to be the wealthiest person in a long-term care facility. I mean, that's not an achievement. That's shit. So it's really about saying, like, you know, how do I enjoy health today? And it's something that we can choose. And that's one of the things I'm very, very passionate about, is having people understand that it's as simple as a choice. And you can eat anything you want. You really can, but it's just got to be food. And let's not confuse French fries with French fries. You can take a perfectly good potato, cut it up, put some olive oil on it, you know, put all your favorite spices on, throw it in the oven. Hey, don't tell me that's not healthy. That's beautifully healthy. But then you can also eat some shit from some fast food restaurant. Those are French fries, but look, that is just shit.
20% potato in it.
Yes, and there's chemicals in there that would blow your mind. I mean, you need a chemistry set to figure out half the crap that we're eating. So it's not about avoiding burgers and fries and pizza and all that stuff. It's nothing to do with that. It's just about, look, every cell in your body, every cell in your brain is made from what you eat. You cannot give yourself something that isn't food and expect anything other than the results that we're seeing. You know, obesity. You know, people think, oh, obesity means being overweight. Bullshit. It's got nothing to do with overweight. It's a health issue. It's not a weight issue. And obesity will reveal itself through heart disease, through dementia, through addiction. It reveals itself all kinds of ways. So we have this delusion. That's why I called the book Obesity. It's not what you think it is, because it's not. And it's got nothing to do with weight. There's people that are, you could call flat out skinny, that are dangerously obese. And there's people that are overweight that are not obese. So obesity is a health issue. And, and I would, if you're with a group of adults, hey, if you want to do what you do, that's your business. But, when we're unwittingly poisoning our children, that's bullshit. And, whenever there's any proposed legislation to combat this, well, what happens? The big food companies marshal their army of lawyers and lobbyists and, you can't do this. This is taking away freedom of choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would say, okay, freedom of choice, eh? Well, when a 5-year-old child is addicted, has fatty liver disease and is addicted to food and is facing a lifetime of obesity and addiction, tell that child, gee, sure, sorry about that. You made some bad choices. Bullshit.
Yeah.
That's where I would draw a line. That's where, again, this is a very, very serious issue, and it's a cognitive issue as much as it's a physical issue. So I'm very passionate about that. And the other core one is, just basically decision making, because if you can make those decisions about, what kind of education do you want? Who should I marry? Where should I put down roots? What kind of a job should I have? What, should I retire or shouldn't I retire? All those decisions, if you can make those with confidence, life is just easier and it's more joyful.
Absolutely. On the food thing, it's super interesting. Like I've got to take stomach pills like every day because I get really bad acid reflux from eating and drinking stuff that like is obviously going to kill the stomach. But we went to Poland this past summer for 2 weeks, and everything that I ate, you think you're eating more unhealthy because at home, I try and watch my carbs and whatever. Over there, you just kind of eat everything, and you're eating way more desserts and way more other shit. But I didn't have to take my pills for like the entire 2 weeks I was there, and my stomach was like settled. And then literally the minute we got home, 5 hours after having something to eat here, whether it was just like a sandwich, it was something super simple. The amount of chemicals in the same type of food here just killed my stomach. And, the same day I'm like, 5 times in the washroom and then popping my pills every morning again. Like, it is crazy in North America, the shit that's in our food that people don't realize versus like what's in real food. Like you say, potatoes and like healthy starches and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I'm so glad you shared that, because you just nailed it. I mean, that is exactly what it is. We have been conditioned to think that as a society, we're getting fatter and sicker. Because we lack willpower. We're too sedentary. It's my genetics. It's my biology, psychology, sociology, endocrinology, anything else these guys want to cook up to take the focus off the shit they're selling. And that's really what it is. They're selling us poison. And it's so, when you see commercials and like when you grow up with it, we don't question it. And your example is absolutely bang on. Every cell in your body will be the result of what you eat. So you just simply cannot feed your body chemicals because we are not biologically equipped to eat this shit.
Yeah.
We are not biologically equipped. And it's just that simple. I went to, my wife and I were in Italy a while back, and we would drink, at the end of the day, we'd have a beautiful meal and a bottle of wine or two. We came home and we had lost weight, and we ate. we ate big time, never questioned anything.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the thing. We're not eating food. And again, as I say, it's poisoning ourselves is one thing, but when we unwittingly poison our children and condemn them to a lifetime of accepting these chemicals. See, we confuse developing a tolerance to chemicals with an acceptance of it. The human body is amazing. We can develop a tolerance, obviously, to excessive alcohol. We can develop a tolerance to nicotine. We can develop a tolerance. It doesn't make it any less harmful just because we've developed a tolerance for it. And that's where we confuse a tolerance with an acceptance. And it's just that simple. Yeah. So I really try to open people's eyes that, look, you don't have to, go through these crazy acrobatic diets and all this bullshit.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. Eat real food. Eat real food.
I was told by somebody, they're like, hey, Google what's in, black thyme and shredded cheese, like when you buy a pack of shredded cheese. So I Google it, and it's like the chemicals that are in wood chips. And I started reading about why, and it's like, well, take a block of cheddar cheese. So I did this at home, and I'm like, when I told the wife, I'm like, because we eat tacos and all that kind of stuff all the time, and usually she would buy those packs of like pre-shredded cheese, and I'm like, take a real block of shredded cheese and shred it and leave it on a plate for 5 minutes. Then leave it on a plate for an hour and just see what it does. And it shrivels up and it gets all oily because it's like there's more real cheese in it. Take a bag of that, put it on a plate, and leave it for 5 days, and it doesn't move. Like there's so little cheese in that shit. It's fucking crazy. And then when you start Googling the chemicals in it, it's like you're literally eating wood chips. Like there's
100%.
barely any cheese in that.
Yeah.
And if you Google it, like it's legitimate. And that's the only way they can keep it like look long, shredded, stay in a pack for 3 weeks or whatever it's good for. Like it's crazy.
Do you know, just to take off from what you just said, in Finland, I think it's, I think I might have the country wrong, but if it may not be Finland, but it's a Scandinavian country. They banned McDonald's flat out. Now they have a museum where they took the last Big Mac and it's sitting under glass.
I've seen this, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like 10, 15, 20 years old. It's completely preserved and now there's no air conditioning in it. It's just sitting there in a glass box.
There's no mold on it, nothing.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Like, how do you get your head around this shit? You know, it's just mind-boggling. And you know what? And I'm certainly not I'm not ragging on the food companies because it's not their job. And in fact, they could be sued by their shareholders if they said, you know, our first concern is to look after the public. Because no, your first concern is to your shareholder. You have an obligation, and you could be sued if you didn't do that. So we often think, oh, okay, we gotta legislate against these food companies and make them do this. That's a huge mistake. That's the fundamental mistake we're making. No, it's not up to the food companies. It's up to you. You have that power. You can teach you have the power for yourself and for your children to start saying, no, you know what, we're only going to give ourselves real food. And that's your power. So I think the big mistake we've been doing is saying, well, we need to legislate. And of course, let's suppose let's say you're a senator in Georgia. Well, okay, so you got millions of people working for Coca-Cola. Are you going to vote against that? And, it would be political suicide. So we keep trying to get someone else to do it. And I think that, and I believe that pretty much everything that happens in our life is all about just a switch in perspective. You get this Saul in Damascus kind of this revelation. When you get that, it's a wonderful thing. And that's what I'm hoping people can get, that revelation when I do a talk on, say, obesity, is, okay, you know what? I don't need to buy anything. I just need to spend a little bit of time and start making some food, enjoying food. Because the moment I could not, if I was to eat anything like, whether it's McDonald's or anything else, I know for a fact I couldn't even hold it down. Just walking past those things now, when you're so used to eating real food, you just walk past it. It makes me nauseous. It's just it's disgusting. But it takes a while to get used to it, because once you reset your palate, your taste buds, everything tastes different, because we are so used to hyper palatable things. Like you drink, say, apple juice or something. Well, it doesn't taste like it. It's hyper. It's all hyper chemicals.
It's overflavored.
Yes, precisely that. It's so when we restore our palates, all of a sudden you can't eat this shit anymore. You will know automatically when you're eating garbage, because it just
tastes fake, and
it doesn't work when it gets into your stomach either. As you just said, just doesn't work, because your body's going like, "Come on, man! All I want is some food."
Yeah.
When I think a lot of these themes we're talking about, there's huge crossover, because I would argue when we put together, our resource on financial literacy and what to teach a kiddo about money, and there's a marketing component in there that they have to understand. Like, you have to educate your kids that marketing is real, branding is real. What is an advertisement? They have to know that, because that's a pitfall to avoid. And if you're conscious at it and you're saying, okay, well, and again, not to pick on McDonald's in any way, but it's an easy example of somebody who has a corporation who has perfectly positioned their product, and they have turned food into a product, and then they've built the branding around it, and then they go out and sell it, and their marketing is better than anybody's. I mean, it's on a psychological level on how they attract minds to their products to get that spend. if you have awareness of that, and if you're teaching your kids that, to say, listen, and if I was teaching it too, much like you, I'd say there's nothing wrong with that. That's we live in a world where you're going to run into corporations, and those corporations have a fiducial responsibility to shareholders, and this is the world that we live in. Like this is the country we live in. But then to have that understanding that, okay, I am being sold to.
Yeah.
They would like my money.
Yes.
They would like me to give their money for that product. And that's economy. That's the way that it goes. That has to be explained. And then you can start to fill in some of the blanks too. Like, if I'm walking through, let's use your potato example. If I walk through a grocery store and I picked up a potato to either one of my girls and I said, what is that? And they say potato. And if you've had that conversation, you can say, okay, perfect. Who does this potato work for? They'd say, well, I don't know who it works for. It was probably grown by a farmer, and it was probably, yeah, you're probably right. What do you think this potato's marketing budget is? Well, they probably don't have one because it's right. When's the last time you saw a commercial about this potato? Well, I didn't. Right. So what chance do you think that potato stands against the perfectly curated French fries over here? Who's going to buy more? Who's going to sell more? And kids get it, man. They understand. They're like, yeah, okay, that's right. So maybe when I do see that product on the shelf, maybe it isn't part of my decision-making impulse. Maybe I'm trying to be sold to. Yeah. And then that leads to better decisions, whether that's better food choices, better money choices, better whatever, just that awareness of the world. Because I'd also say when you said waiting for somebody else to do it, waiting for government to do it, or these, food and drug administrations. It's not. I believe in a perfectly ideal scenario. Is it their job? Sure, yeah, it's their job. But you're so naive to think that they don't have other interests. Yeah. They don't have, an election to win, or they don't have money that they have to raise to go and, that's
let's be real. Time and laziness is a huge factor.
For sure.
Like people just don't want to go home and chop up a bunch of potatoes and make fries because they've come up with an excuse for it. Yeah. And whether that's too much work or they're tired or whatever, right? So like laziness plays into a big factor, but again, that's choices. Like, those people also probably aren't the same people that are making the choice to get up an hour and a half earlier and go to the gym in the morning. Right. Right. Like it's a choice.
Yeah. And that is powerful, teaching the kids too, like that is a choice. And sometimes, and again, we're probably, if we compare notes, we're on the same page most of the time, but one of the things
I think you're probably a few pages ahead of us, but
yeah, that's true. But one of the things is like, sometimes, in the haste of the moment, you make the decision that is easiest, right? Because it's easiest. It's easier. It's faster. It's all of those things.
It's convenient.
Yeah. But I think what most people need to realize is that it's not about the short term. It's about the long play. Like if you made that decision right 95% of the time, you're gonna be a pretty healthy person. 100%. Because I think that there's always going to be that little place, that 5% or whatever your number is, where the junk food wins, where it is potato chips or it is, whatever it is. Don't condemn yourself on that. Right. Just know that, okay, 95% of the time I know, and even on the 5%, I know. Like anybody listening to this, listen, if I put a couple of foods in front of you and I said, which one is the worst? Like you're going to know. You're going to know intuitively when you're eating like an asshole. Like we're all grown-ups, right? But do it right 95% of the time. Yeah.
But there are a lot of people that are ignorant to it and don't know as well. Like look at vitamin water. Like what a smart fucking branding play that was. And there's nothing healthy about vitamin water. Yet they got sold to Coca-Cola for like fucking $3 billion. You know what I mean? Like it's ignorance too. Like people they believe what they want to believe, and they believe what they're told. Nobody second guesses anything and wants to think for themselves.
And how about reading a label? What if that was a thing that we taught, right? Just bring on a food expert like yourself and just say, how would you teach a kid to read a label? Yeah. That's a skill.
Yeah, it is. And but what you've just said is pretty much sums it all up. And again, it's not about being, regimented. I can never do this, because that's bullshit too. I mean, but it's what you do 80% of the time. That's really what's going to, determine, I think, many, many things in life. It's, at the age that I'm at now, I try not to be too rigid about anything. You know, I enjoy wine. I enjoy drinking, but it's all about keeping it all in perspective. Because a lot of times too, you know, people go, "Oh, I can't have this." Well, or I have to go to the gym. Well, if all you're going to do is heap all kinds of stress onto yourself, you're really not coming out ahead at all. You've got to find that joy, like joy in the sense that, you know, I love eating well most of the time, but I also love a bag of chips once in a while. That's success.
It can't be a
That's
chore.
really success.
If it's a chore, then
Yeah.
why are you
Exactly.
doing it? Yeah.
If you're just dragging your ass, like, oh, I got to do this, that's not living either,
Yeah.
you know? But I think it's that perspective that, you know, using food as an example, once you wean yourself from eating all that shit, believe me, it doesn't take any willpower to avoid it, because it does taste like shit. Our palate's not designed to eat chemical. And if we uncondition ourselves from eating that stuff, you'll be amazed at how much joy you can have, you know, eating real food. God, it just tastes so good. And when you, you know, and again, when you have that chemical stuff, it's foul.
Yeah. One of the other things, and this segues really well into it, is I know you've written and you've been very vocal on the subject of mental health, and specifically men's mental health. So I'd just like to hear your take on that. Where do you feel we're at with mental health these days? What are the conversations you're most excited about, and share some examples?
Well, the challenge of mental health that we're into now. I just think that the world that we're in is just, it's not conducive to it's not conducive to how we have been meant to be in this world. When you think about, let's go back into the evolution. What were we doing back then? Everything worked. We were in small tribes. We had camaraderie. We had all those things that work for humanity. Friendships. We had, you know, I guess competitions. All the things. We're in a world today that's so very different, and I believe we can perfectly fit into this world. It's not as if we have to be square pegs in round holes, but I think we have to realize that mental health and physical health, and they go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other, really. And as I said earlier, a lot of the problems that we have, obesity, is as much of a cognitive issue as it is a physical issue. It's very much a cognitive issue. So to me, health comes down to having, I think you touched on it too, relationships. It's having a sense of fulfillment, a sense of satisfaction. It all comes back down to, again, the more control we have over our lives, okay, the healthier and happier we're going to be. And it's not about being maniacal. It's just about having a sense of who's driving the ship. And if our lives are basically a lot of reaction, you know, what happens? You turn on your phone and okay, so you react to what's coming down the stream. It's, you know, some algorithm says, oh, this is what, you know, Chris or Jamie likes. So we pump you full of this stuff. All we're doing is reacting all day long. And that's where, you know, on my website, it's like, life is about choices, and control in life is when you make those choices. And I think that's really what the key is. We have to get back to making a little bit more control over our lives and not allow ourselves to be controlled. And there's joy in that. And I think that's really the solution for physical and mental health. It's taking back those choices. It's a very, very challenging thing when you start going into the into some of the darker parts of emotions and that, and I'm not qualified to go there whatsoever. But on a more of a 30,000 foot level, I really believe that the more we can learn to understand how our minds really work, and it's it's not that difficult. It's fascinating and fun. But I really believe the joy in life is the more we can control it, and know that we've controlled it. Know that we're choosing the food we want. We're choosing the entertainment we want. These are positive choices that we're making. We're not reacting. We're choosing. And if we can, and especially, speaking about, in a family, if we can teach our children to make those choices and understand that a lot of times we're being manipulated. And there's massive repercussions to being manipulated because it just gives you a sense of, well, okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is so subconscious. That's the thing. It's really a subconscious thing.
Well, and looking back at like the evolution side of it, where you mentioned like a tribe, like that shit matters now. And I think that's what a big piece of what a lot of people don't have is they don't have that tribe, that support system, that network, that person they can fall back on, like having that tribe. And I believe like we've talked about this a bunch of times. Like sometimes that tribe changes and that circle changes, that support system changes, but like there's not enough people out there that have that tribe, right? So looking back into evolution like that probably was like a big factor for a lot of people back then that people don't have now either.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Absolutely that. That's it. Exactly that. Yeah.
And that control piece you talked of, like you can change your dynamics.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the moment,
right?
But you can consciously change and manifest what it is you're hoping to run towards. But declare it. Decide. I want those people.
And with Capillary, that's what we're trying to do. Like that's for a lot of guys that don't have a tribe. That's giving them a Monday night tribe, a Tuesday night tribe.
Yeah.
Trying to build up the Wednesday night one now. So like we're trying, and with the help of professionals like you, like what a difference it's making to so many different people's lives for sure.
And I love that example you gave. We were chatting the other day over a beer, and you said, "Yeah, you gotta run to it." And I said, "Tell me about that. What does that mean?"
Yeah, so that's one that I'm still.
I loved it.
Work in progress, but early on, I had a mentor in my life that basically told me, he was watching me work, and he would say, the stuff you get excited about, you run towards that, man. You get so passionate about it, you get it done. But there's this little pile of stuff over here that I know you don't like. Could be conflict. It could be, and I don't mind a little confrontation. It's not that, but it was the stuff that I knew that I wasn't prioritizing. And he said, the thing about that is when you park it over there, it has a tendency to grow. It doesn't have a tendency to go away. It has a tendency to really put some roots down, and it can be defocusing. It can creep up in other ways. He goes, if you've really identified the things that you should be doing, but you're not doing, what happened if you just ran towards them?
Yeah.
Like what happened if you took it, identified it, and instead of putting it on the side, you went right after it? He goes, those things have a tendency to get scared when you run at them, and they go away or they get solved. But you have to have the awareness that, that is a thing I should go run after. I should get it done. I'm putting it on the shelf, and I'm not doing myself a favor by doing it.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, that was really good. I thought about that a lot since you said it. And it's a wonderful.
He's
example.
had really, really smart man. This is Peter Beresford, to give him a shout out. And it's funny we talk about McDonald's today because, as it happens, he was a global executive for McDonald's. He was, and shout out Peter. He was a guy that was absolutely at the top level C-suite. Opened up markets like Russia, where he met his beautiful wife, Masha. Shout out Masha, such a wonderful lady and so sweet to my kids. And then he opened up markets like Japan. And so I had those insights early on in my career where I got to see the machine.
Mm-hmm.
And there is nothing wrong with McDonald's. At the end of the day, I think that they play a role.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can choose not to do business with them in a lot of ways, but there's people that love them, and there's shareholders that love them, and they serve a purpose. Like
they do.
That being said, I saw the machine, and he gave me some wisdom that I still play in my mind, and I'll share one more, and then we'll get back to our esteemed guest here. He used to say to me, anytime there was something going on. And, we were growing a business at that point, and we had a lot of people that were naysayers. No, you can't. But, fuck that, fuck this, all the negative shit that you get. And I used to, wear it. I used to really, and sometimes I'd catch myself getting into it. What the fuck did you just say to me? and I'd detour and I'd go, and he goes, whatever. And he goes, Let me give you an analogy on this one, Chris. He goes, never get in the mud with a pig. I said, okay, never get in the mud with a pig. He goes, here's what happens, man. You get in there with that pig. You both get dirty, and secretly the pig fucking loves it. So I still use that day to day. And I got Bello gave me a shout out the other day because he used the same thing. And I do it in my mind because it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. I promise you're going to get people that will talk shit.
I feel like that happened on the Facebook group last night.
I gave Jamie the same note last night. Don't do it, man. Because again, it doesn't matter.
I got sucked into rolling in shit last night.
You did, man. And the trolling is real. Like there are people out there. And if you want to get, real high level, not to ascend myself to level 800 here or whatever, but if you want to get real high level about it, is those people are often fucking miserable.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even their fault, man. Sometimes boss did this or relationship went this way or you just never know. But it comes across as like just people being shitty behind the keyboard or whatever doing it. But it's so easy to get baited in, especially when they know you. And they know what you stand for. Like you're a guy that puts it out there. Or if they know that
you have something to lose.
100%. Like everybody, like when you put your truth out there and you say, okay, I'll do yours. I'm Jamie Kozib. I fucking hate wearing sleeves. I like Jack Daniels. Love my family. Love my community. Love my groups. I volunteer. As soon as you put it out there, you get somebody that wants to be shitty. They can go, well, fuck sleeves and fuck Jack Daniels and fuck that. And you can't help but be like, well, that doesn't feel nice. Right? Like they got my number and they called it. Like that doesn't feel nice. But that person that's doing that, man, you don't know. You don't know what their day was like. And you
maybe
don't know
the person
why
hasn't seen their kids in 2 months or something.
You never know, dude. So even when you hear it and you're like, man, that's shitty. Like the best way to do it is just don't get in the mud with the pig, man. If he wants to be dirty, he wants to roll around, he wants to act some type of way, that's his right. Yeah. Just as it's my right to react or not, right? So just don't get in the mud with the pig, right?
Love it. Yeah.
Easier said than done. I've gotten in the mud a few times, but you just gotta try and keep the head straight, man. Yeah. I have a couple of questions that we like to ask our guests every time. Can I throw them at you?
Go.
So one of these off the hop, this is one you and I haven't even talked about, but it's a fun one. So we get a lot of people on here that are car guys. I'm one of them. So I got to choose this question. So the question goes like this. We're going to play Dream Car Garage. Okay. I'm going to ask you for 3 vehicles. I want you to choose. This is your Dream Car Garage.
Okay.
What's the daily driver? What would you drive as a winter beater, the winter vehicle? And what's the all-out flex? All the money in the world, garage, 3 spaces. What are you putting in there?
Well, it's got to be a Lambo.
Okay.
For sure.
The flex is Lambo, like current generation Lambo. You a 2-door guy or an SUV guy?
2-door.
Okay.
2-door for sure.
Lambo's the flex. What's the daily?
The daily, a Bentley. Yeah.
Nice.
That just says a lot right there.
Yeah. Continental GT, like 2-door Bentley or something big like the Bateglis?
I guess if I'm driving, it'd be a 2.
Yeah.
White. Black rims.
Kozib has a Bentley.
By the old line.
It's for sale. Real good price. Okay, so Bentley for a daily. And then what's the winter beater? What are you driving to get around our snow here?
Oh, winter beater. That's a good one. I think that I think that latest one that Elon came out with, that crazy fucking that Cybertruck. That would be.
Go. I like this guy.
Sorry.
That would be like the ultimate. Like, I'm just gonna drive through the snow and like fuck everybody.
I like this guy.
You were our first guest to say that is a choice that you would like to drive a Cybertruck.
And winter beater, too.
Because I'll tell you, Cybertruck comes up a lot, but it's not on that question. The next question, Richard, is what's the ugliest fucking vehicle on the road?
Well, probably the Cybertruck. Right. I'd go with that, but it's a statement. It's like, okay, it's winter, it's shit. Like, fuck it. Let me get this hog and I'm going. Yeah.
I just got mine like 4 days ago.
You did?
Yeah.
How do you like it?
I fucking love it. Yeah. I only had it for like a day. We dropped it off and it's getting a bunch of other cool shit done to it, but I love it.
Unreal.
Yeah.
You got one.
Yeah, it's my winter beater.
There you go.
And it's going to be, when it comes out of the shop all wrapped, it's going to be something.
Oh, it's going to piss
What
people
color
off.
is it? Do they come in different colors?
It's literally like this color
Silver.
blue.
Okay.
Like the Red Bull blue.
Oh, the red. Oh, nice.
Yeah. Shout out sugar-free Red Bull.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Literally that exact same color.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. I should have it hopefully Friday. Should be
That's
ready to rock.
exciting.
Yeah.
Shit. That's right on.
Yeah.
Good for you.
He had to go get it to our buddy's shop to get it wrapped, and so I was gonna drive him over, and he's like, "No, you take the Cybertruck," and I'm like, "Hard pass, man. No, thank you. I'll just
Scared to drive it. Yeah.
And he's like, "No, you should drive it." And I'm like, "Okay, so I'm gonna drive it." So I got to tell you, and again, I had Tesla Model Y Performance, and I was excited about that, and ended up lease busting it because I liked it that low. Like, I just wasn't the car for me.
You liked it that low?
I did not enjoy it at all. Man.
Really?
Just for I don't want to bash. I know we got some Tesla fanboys
you like what you
right
like.
now, but just wasn't for me. I'm a gas guy. I like. Yeah.
So what? Yeah, like what is it that just didn't jive?
If I had to go like top few things, so first off, very fast. Not taking anything away from it. You put your foot in that, and it was instant, and it went.
Yeah.
I felt like it was the clinical, completely whitewashed version of a car. I felt it had no soul. There was nothing about it that made me want to drive it. The steering was terrible. It was disconnected. The just the overall build quality just was.
Tell us how you really feel.
Dude,
wow, that's
again,
so fascinating.
I don't want to piss off Tesla fanboys, and shout out Elon, like a lot of the shit he does, but it was just a bad car. Period. So got out of that. Now, credit where it's due. I drove the Cybertruck.
Okay.
First thing I noticed was driving out of here, everybody was looking.
Absolutely.
First thing he noticed, I'm like, you've had a Tesla, right? So you know how to I got this. Like, I had a Tesla. Okay.
Yeah.
I get a phone call.
I did not got this. I did not got this.
5 minutes after I left the parking lot, I'm like, he's still not behind me. Like,
oh no! So they changed shit again, even for off of mine. That one was only within the last year and a half. They changed it again. The starting sequence is now like a swipe up on the dash, and I don't fucking know.
It's just like Tinder. You literally just swipe and the car starts.
So but does the car?
I don't know what Tinder does. So I don't have a Tinder account.
There's a joke there at least about like, well, at least when you swipe the car, it turns on, Jamie. That would be different for you. So, and then the second thing is it made me put the key card in the cup holder, I guess, like the thing on the side, and I didn't figure that out. So if we want to back right up, I was sitting my ass in this car for a couple minutes before I could figure out how to get it going. But then I got it going, and everybody was looking, and I'm like, "Oh, this is uncomfortable. I hope none of my friends see me in this." And that was kind of the vibe that I had. However, extremely fast. Like, what's yours? Yours is a beast something.
Yeah,
right?
it's a Cyber Beast. So it's triple motor, dual battery. It's 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. Like, it's faster than a Lambo.
Yeah,
it's 836 horsepower.
Oh my God.
It feels like every single one of those horsepower. Like it is instant and it goes like shit.
Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
That was kind of cool. And then the other thing is it's got a different steering mechanism than mine had. This has like it's not a full yoke, but it's like a flat top steering wheel. They call it a yoke steering wheel.
I don't know what they call it.
Anyways,
it's
but
wire steering.
Yeah, and it's only a half turn. So it's like almost what I would like if you've ever been like in an F1 simulator, it's the same thing. You only get a half turn of the wheel in either direction. Yeah. So thought that was super cool.
And turning radius is like nothing. Yeah. Like it's super, like it's crazy. You could pull a U-turn without like going wide. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, and just because of the size of the vehicle, and it is substantial, like especially when you're in it, it feels really, really big. The turning was mind blowing, totally dialed in, totally impressive. And then I just felt like the inside of it was surprisingly nice. I mean, you look at it on the outside and it's clearly a turd, and then you get inside of it and you're like, oh, there's a little bit of thought in here. Like, okay, nice.
They decorated the trash can.
That's right. Nicest dumpster I've ever been in, 100%. So yeah, so that was kind of a fun, I don't know, nice surprise. So I'm excited for you, bro.
You got to wonder when they were designing this thing. Okay, so it's whoever draws it all up and okay, so, well, let's get people's opinions. Now, they had to be, most people had to walk in and go, holy fuck.
I think Elon did it, and he was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to go into the shareholder meeting and see if I could just piss off a bunch of people.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sketch something stupid out and just like mock everybody. And,
honestly,
then they were all like, oh my God, this thing's amazing. Yeah, let's do this. It had to have been a joke. Like, I think so.
There's got to be some good stories behind that, like the whole design of it, because it's
100%.
just, you can't help but when you see it, like, it's just like, wow.
And no different than the press release, right? Like, they knew when they went into that first press release, like, look at these bulletproof, shatterproof windows and smash. Like, they set that up as a joke, no different than the designers thing. Like, this has all been fucking properly marked up.
Marketing goes back to it, man.
No doubt.
Yeah, but I also like we're talking about it right now, and it's been an ongoing joke for the last few episodes because like people are talking about it, and it is so different, right? So like I also kind of respect that. Like I think as a car guy, anytime somebody tries to push the needle, like maybe like a Pontiac Aztec aside, you got to go, wow, that's cool. Like you're at least trying.
It's a smart move.
And I think somebody's going to listen to this. Hopefully somebody listens to this in like 10 years time and goes, yeah, they all fucking look like that. Or like, what do you mean? That's what they like. I think it could be, right?
I was driving with the kids when we picked it up. We were got off the highway in Burlington and driving towards the house and like stopped at a light, and a guy looks out his window and just goes like this. And my oldest goes, "Did you see that guy who just gave us the finger?" I'm like, that's fucking amazing, man. I can't wait till this thing's wrapped and pisses that guy off even
Love
more.
it. Yeah, love it.
The guy was me, just so and it does. It evokes emotion, man.
Like, imagine being that person, like, you dislike a vehicle so much that you just give the driver the middle finger for no reason.
Man.
Yeah.
And
then imagine being the guy that buys one, knows all this and goes, yeah, that's the one for me.
it's like somebody that gets involved in politics.
Yeah,
like, your life is going to get ruined and torn apart, but you still signed up to do this.
Yeah, that's what it is, man. And then we got one more segment too. Well, actually, here we usually close out on this segment. So let me pause for a second and say, it's been a pleasure, my man, and thank you for your insights. And it's so cool just to obviously chat GPT, but the other day when we were talking, it's just so cool to see that you can, like you find your own path, follow your passion, be curious. Like that's dope. Anybody who's listening, do that. Be more curious. Is there anything else you want to plug, talk about? Anything you talk about? We'll get Miles to throw links in there.
Yeah. Just my website, richardfast.com. It's it's just my blog. I write some stuff that might resonate with you, might not. But there's a variety of things there. And I don't write for the sake of writing. I write when I feel like I really need to say something. Yeah. And a lot of times, what writing is. You write it to yourself as much as anybody else. When I wrote that piece on atheism, I mean, I wrote that for myself. It went kind of viral, so it obviously resonated with a lot of people. But yeah, that's really it. Check out my website, see what you think. Yeah, maybe, and some of the stuff might help you, might not. But if it does, hey, then we both win.
Yeah. And anybody who's looking to book talent, whether that's for a corporate event or a speaking engagement or whatever, I just want to be clear that, I've had the good fortune of sitting in front of some pretty smart people. Like Richard presents himself really well. I hope that comes through on the podcast, but you'd be awesome to see live. I'll be your fanboy the next time that happens. You let me know.
We're your champion.
Yeah, that's right. So last one we close out on. Tell us a dad joke. Okay.
So I don't have a dad joke. I'm gonna share a dad's story with you.
Okay.
Because my dad, growing up, he must have told me this more than a dozen times for sure. And every time he told it, it was always preceded with this caveat: Richard, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Okay. And then he would get into the story. So my dad grew up on a farm, as I did, but he grew up on a farm through the late 30s, all through the 40s. And they had a wide variety of crops. And unfortunately for them, many of their crops, just happened to suit the palate of this dreaded Colorado beetle bug. And so the thing about and I say the dreaded Colorado beetle bug because this thing it could really, in about 3 or 4 days, it could pretty much devastate a crop, pick it clean. But worse than that was that it had this uncanny ability, and it still to this day has this uncanny ability to develop a tolerance for any kind of toxin, any kind of poison that they would throw at it. So it was very difficult to deal with. So anyway, back then, the middle of in a farming community, which many of them were at that time, you've got your farmers co-op. That was kind of the center. That's where farmers would, they would go there to buy their sprays and their fertilizers. And of course, it's also where they go to gossip and gripe about the weather. And of course, talk about, how they're going to combat the latest scourge. Well, in this case, it happened to be, the pending arrival. It didn't always come, but it was the pending arrival of the Colorado beetle bug. So, while these farmers are all standing around their overalls lamenting about this possible problem, somebody picks up the Farmer's Almanac and says, "Oh, look at this article." It says, the beetle bug, the Colorado beetle bug solution. So the article said that they had discovered a way to kill the Colorado beetle bug with one guaranteed 100% certainty. Not only that, the beetle bug would kill every bug, and it worked every single time, no exceptions. And of course, all you had to do is you mail $1.15 to the beetle bug solution. This is, of course, back in the 40s. Mail $1.15 to the beetle bug solution, and they would send you the post haste. They would send you the solution. Well, of course, as soon as and it also said, very, very that they would absolutely guarantee that this worked every time, and if it didn't, money cheerfully refunded. Well, of course, a bunch of farmers hear this automatically. Everybody's pretty skeptical about the whole thing. But one of the farmers said, "Well, yeah, but what do we got to lose? I mean, they're saying this thing works. We get our money back if it doesn't work. So what the hell? Let's take a flyer." Well, that line of logic obviously stood up, because the following day, the postman had a satchel full of envelopes mailed to the Colorado beetle bug solution. So about 2 weeks later, the solutions are coming back through the mail, and they arrive in these little brown envelopes, which contained the guaranteed solution. Inside were these 2 little blocks of wood and some instructions as to how to use them. So it said, to kill the beetle bug, place it on the center of one of the blocks of wood, take the other block, smash down hard on it, works every time. Well, as you can imagine, there was no talk about the beetle bug solution at the farmers co-op for the next few days, because nobody wanted to admit getting suckered by such an obvious scam. But there was some beauty to it. I mean, it was pure artistry, and eventually, these things have to rise to the surface, and the farmers all had a good laugh, and they had to admit that was a pretty good scam. And then, then one farmer's going like, "Yeah, no, we ought to go after these guys. I mean, this is just lying larceny, and these guys should be in jail for 1,000 years, blah, blah, blah." There was a little bit of murmuring going on about, maybe we should go after these guys. And this wise old wag, he says, "Look, boys, let's get something clear. The product and the advertisement and the instructions all did exactly as promised." So he said, "Now let's look at it logically here. We got ourselves a very good, valuable life lesson, and we had a hell of a good laugh, all for $1.15. So it's a pretty good deal." So my dad would always finish, "So Richard, here's the thing. If it sounds too good to be true, it is." So that was his story.
You should become an inventor.
Yeah.
Great story, man.
Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate you doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll chat soon.